Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. I have a guest here today, actually two. Hope you're watching on video. This guy is the cutest right here, Cooper. And our other guest of the day is returning podcast guest, two-time Division I All-American at University of Oregon. She is also the operations manager for BTG basketball, the strength coach for BTG basketball, and the director of the BTG Athletics Foundation nonprofit. Coach Addie Lacewell, welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks, Coach. That was an excellent introduction.
Yeah, not too bad. It's also my beautiful fiance. That's the more important role, right? When we're all talking about roles and identity, it's important to recognize the humanity behind all of it. So enough of all this fluff. Let's get into our topic of the day. And so as you all have listened, maybe you're a new listener, maybe you've been listening for a long time, the podcast is continuing to evolve. And for you as a coach and or a parent, or I call them like athlete influencers, like those that have an opportunity to impact athletes, we really want to create this experience for you all to give you like tangible wisdom to take with you so it can be practical and you can put it into place right away. So today we're going to be talking about empowering our athletes and helping them earn everything, and also how you can actually create an open door policy where your athletes will actually come to you and connect with you. And, Addie will share her experience at the University of Oregon, some of the great things that happened there, some of the things that she is changing now with her as a coach. So, Addie, before we kind of dive into all those kind of topics, I want to ask you, what do you feel like when we've talked about some of your coaches in the past. What do you think makes a great coach?
Well, I think first and foremost, to be a great coach, I have to feel like you care. I know as an athlete, and I think it's the quote that you sign off your emails with. What is it?
They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, I think that as cheesy as it is, it's absolutely the truth. I think that as an athlete, if I ever felt like my coaches really cared, all the other stuff was secondary to me. You can teach somebody to know your sport better. You can develop those skills. But what you can't teach is like empathy a lot of the time with your coaches, like with adults. I think that was the number one thing for me. My favorite coaches were the coaches that had that open door policy that I could come to and we could talk about XYZ, and I didn't feel like they were going to write me off because we had some sort of disagreement. I think that was the main thing that made a great coach.
I love that. And so obviously caring is that kind of through line that she had talked about. And so one of those things is like, I feel like we all get into this industry, for at least 90% of us, we get into the industry of youth sports because we care so much, number one, about the sports, and obviously giving back our love for the sport. So we're talking about like, there's a difference between saying, right? Telling a kid, telling anyone that you love them or you care about them, but it's all about showing them. And so can you talk about how you try and show people, or you've noticed how other coaches maybe try and show like in actions of caring and love for their athletes?
Yeah. I think this is something that I try to do in every aspect of my life. I think it makes a huge difference is like actually listening. I know a lot of the time people say that they're listening, and I'm guilty of this, Justin's guilty of this, everybody is guilty of this, but they're not truly listening. With our athletes, I ask them questions, and then I make sure I remember their answers to those questions, and I follow up with those questions later on in the week, in the month, whatever. You'd be like amazed how much rapport that builds with your athletes. I think that listening, like, I think that that's something I take a lot of pride in, is listening and keeping track of what's going on in my athletes' lives. That's made the most difference.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point. And I feel like it's a great way to show people you care, asking questions and showing that curiosity. Now, a lot of times I think when I was, kind of getting into coaching and I was listening to a lot of coaching podcasts, I don't listen to as many anymore. But I remember one of the coaches, I can't remember their name. Like coaches are, like let's talk about high school coach, club coach, doesn't matter. You have, 60 minutes for practice, 2 hours for practice. There's so much to go over. Some coaches will push back, be like, I just need to work on layups, right? I just need to work on whatever that skill is. Now, how do you rebuttal that coach who says they don't have enough time to listen and get to know their athletes?
Am I allowed to curse on the podcast?
Yeah, moderately.
Okay. Well, I just think I'll abbreviate. I think it's BS when people say they don't have time to connect. I think that a lot of people that say they don't have time for that, I think it's a defense mechanism, to be honest. Like, I think that if you don't have the time to ask what are you doing this weekend question, or a follow-up question about something a kid told you last week, then it's because there's some sort of like barrier between you and that sort of connection with somebody. And I think that you should investigate and interrogate that a little bit more. I think that because when you know your athletes, when you know your teammates, and on any level of this, when you know them, the better you know them, the better you're going to be able to play with them, the better your team chemistry is going to be. Like, all of it comes together. You need all of that stuff to make it work. So I think it's I think it's a coaching thing. I think you have to push yourself, just like you ask your athletes to push themselves. You have to push yourself to be open to building a community with your athletes and to having conversations that might make you uncomfortable. Maybe you're not somebody who is great at the personal side of sports and of connection, but you have to do that if you really want the best program. I mean, community and culture in your program is huge, right? Like, if you guys don't have a solid culture built, then all of the hard work and all the skill and all the talent is oftentimes going to go to waste.
No, I think a lot of people, like, if you go to YouTube, you'll see the most watched videos on YouTube for basketball. Like, I'll just speak specifically for basketball, is how to run a full court press, how to run a 5-out offense. It's not going to be, how can I build a solid team culture where I really care, right? Whatever that YouTube thumbnail title is. And so I think a lot of times coaches get things backwards, right? And I think that's been the reason, like, BTG has grown. That's the reason that our retention rate is in the 80 percentile, like very high. People come back to our programs because we care, like, and people know that we care. And so I think one of the things that we talking about, like building out staples for the program, is like making sure we always acknowledge someone when we come in the room. And I'll share a story that's not even sports related, but just about acknowledging a person. It was my freshman year of high school. I don't even know if I've told you this. Like, I was like right next to a locker of a girl who was she was busing in from an hour away from the high school I went to. And so I would just say hi to her every single morning. And she wrote in the yearbook at the end of the year, like, you don't know how much that meant to me.
Oh, sweet.
Just you saying hi every single day. That's all I did. Maybe I asked her how she was doing and whatnot. It's just a simple acknowledgement of, I see you as a person, and I always try and say bye. It's like, we're getting to the point in the program where I'm like, shoot, did I say what's up to everyone? Did I say bye to everyone? And the answer is probably not, but I do try and do my best. And I think that those are kind of some of the key, like, little deposits, right? I always try and like, if I have other coaches coaching, I'm trying to connect with my athletes one-on-one, and as many as I can, right? It's sometimes it's challenging, it's hard, but if you go and you hear about Nick Saban, you hear about coaches like that, what they do in warm-ups is they try and acknowledge every single person in the room before they really get practice going, which I think is really important.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I'll be honest, like, that was initially awkward for me. Like, Justin is much more of an extrovert than I am, much bubblier naturally than I am. So yeah, it was definitely a little awkward, especially, like, we have mostly teenage boys. And with peace and love to all the teenage boys out there, there's, it's a little awkward, and like, they don't know exactly how to address, like, a female coach a lot of the time. I think for a lot of them, I might be their first female coach. But then, like, even that sort of awkward interaction sometimes where we, like, don't know if we're fist bumping or, like, dapping each other up, like, that sparks a conversation or, like, at least some rapport, because we're like, ooh, that was awkward. Like, let's not do that again. So yeah, it's like, it was a learning curve for me, and it's still kind of awkward, but we learned everybody's names really quickly doing that. I thought, it's awkward, but it was good.
I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about empowerment and helping our youth find their voices, which I think I'm going to tie into the parent and the coaches aspect of things. Is we're in the generation where they have so much information. And so it's really important for us as coaches to ask questions. And I'm going to kind of go back to Addie's point. And like a lot of times we as coaches, we tell. The best coaches and the best teachers, they ask, right? And they guide to the answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a balance, right? It's an art because there are sometimes you have to put your foot down and be like, I'm the coach. This is how it's going to be. Like that's just is what it is. But if you really want to get buy-in, if you really want your team, if you really want to have an open door policy, you have to ask questions. You have to be non-judgmental. And I feel like that's something that we've done a good job at BTG, and is the reason that people, again, want to come back is because, you know, an athlete can ask us a question that's reasonable, right? If we said it 3 times, I do get on them. And we do talk about the 3 smart friends rule, which is basically you tell your athlete, don't ask me a question, ask 3 smart friends before you ask them.
Shout out Coach Keenan for that one.
Because it is important, right? So talking about them advocating for themselves, like whether they want to advocate for playtime, maybe I want to play a different position, maybe I have an issue with a teammate. Now, how can we as coaches create an environment where our athletes can then basically take, you know, initiative in their own hands?
That's an open-ended question for me, huh?
It's open-ended. It's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. I think that all the stuff that we've kind of touched on up until this point ties into creating like this sort of environment where like we speak to one another. I think that a lot of the times there's a really clear hierarchy, or like what's the word I'm looking for? There's a clear boundary between, you know, authority and player. And I think just being a little bit more flexible with that boundary, I think sometimes makes it easier for athletes to come and express their concerns or have difficult conversations with you. Which is not to say that we need to be like buddy. We still, everybody calls Coach Justin, and Coach Addie. We're not. This isn't, you know,
no, we're
hippy
not.
Dippy. We're not doing that quite yet.
We're not doing the kumbaya circles.
No, we're not doing first name basis sort of thing. But it's also something I think that Justin does a really good job of, is like taking accountability when he feels like he could have done better, or like he feels like he could have, and little things, it's not huge things all the time. It's like, maybe I mismanaged our time at practice and I wanted to get to this and I didn't get to that. Sorry, y'all, we should have done that. Like when your athletes see you take accountability and bring up ways in which you could improve, it immediately makes them feel like, oh, you're not like a god, this isn't unattainable, I can talk, you're still human. You know, it's kind of like when you see your parents as human for the first time, you're like, oh, like I can talk to like a peer now. I think that has made a big difference in building a community where your athletes can come up to you. And because our athletes do, I mean, I have a stronger rapport with my female athletes because I am a female athlete, and like that's where I felt comfortable with, and I'm trying to build out, you know, and get more comfortable with the guys. But like I know what's going on in their lives and like how we can work on things in practice because we've talked about my own life. Like I think it's just building, it's letting the walls come down a little bit and being human, expressing when you've messed up, when you could have improved, and things you do well. It's that too. I think sometimes, especially for me, that's tough sometimes for me to brag about myself or to say like, well, I did this. But it's helpful to your athletes too, because they need to acknowledge when they've done a really great job and also when they could improve. I hope that kind of made sense. It was rambly, but
humility is really, and we're role models, right? So when we role model humility, like our athletes respect, like Coach Addie is talking about, that we are human, right? We're human. Yeah. And I think one time we had a coach's barbecue, and I'll kind of circle it back to this. It was just talking about coaching and in development. Like now I'm a director and I'm working with coaches. We had coaches over for a barbecue, and long story short, I am not the best planner and party thrower. So we had the barbecue and our house was a disaster, and some of the coaches came in and One of the coaches, Coach Amir, was just like, don't even worry about your house being a mess. It just shows you're human, right? And I think sometimes that's just all kids want to see. Like, they don't want to see you be perfect. Now, should you be telling them about all the mistakes you made when you were a high schooler? Probably not, right? But just recognizing it, admitting when you could have done a better job. I think that's also one of the reasons, like, it's one of the things that I never really understood, why players are expected to go into an off season and get so much better, but coach can come back to the same team and be the exact same coach.
Right.
Like, I never understood that. That doesn't make sense to me. And so if we're asking our athletes to do something and we don't do it ourselves, then like, we're not going to get the buy-in that we should be getting.
Right. Yeah. And I think to give you some more praise, what?
Keep going.
Okay.
We're recording.
To give coach a little more praises, I think that, and I'm being cynical and maybe skeptical, but I think a lot of people probably get online and say that they do one thing and do the other. I am guilty of that too. Everybody's guilty of that to some extent, but like the open door policy and like having humility, you really have to go into that with like no ego, with very little ego. Like, I think that Coach Justin does a really good job of actually being curious. Like, when people come to him with some sort of feedback, or when a kid has a real problem or wants to talk about playtime or playing a different position, whatever it may be, like the initial reaction from Coach Justin is never to be defensive. It's always to come into the conversation with curiosity. And I think that curiosity, I think, is also like a good keyword for this whole conversation. Like, being a good coach, you have to be curious not only about your sport, but about your athletes, about how you can become more adaptable with a particular athlete. If you demonstrate that you're interested and like curious about how your athletes feel, I think that makes a huge difference.
No, 100%. And again, like, talking about that humility, it's just an opportunity to connect with your athletes, which is kind of what we're kind of going in circles and talking about, that connection. And that's what it's all about. Like, to me, like, I've heard this definition and I honestly agree with it with leadership, right? Because it can be applied to positive or negative in terms of that. Is leadership is how your ability to influence others, nothing more, nothing less. And so it's really like, I can't influence kids or coaches or Cooper, my dog, if they don't know I care about them. Like, yes, I can use my leadership authority and say, Coach, you need to be here at 3:30 on the dot. You're going to do this, this, and this. But it's all about creating a collaborative space and the ability to connect. So I think that's really, at the end of the day, like, we are in this business to make an impact. And I don't personally believe you can make an impact on someone if you can't connect with them. Not necessarily, you don't have to have deep, long conversations on philosophy. Like, just connect to get to know who the person is, know their home life, like, know what they're interested in outside of basketball. Like, I have this one kid, I won't really name names since they're under 18, but he has a t-shirt company. So every time I always ask him, how's your t-shirt company going, man? Like, you making sales? You need any business advice? Certain things like that, just to show you, like, I see you, man. And like, just little things like that go on.
Yeah, I think what you said about being a leader is exactly right. I think that to be a good leader, to be a good coach, I think what I said earlier, and to echo what Justin has said, you need to be a good listener and you need to be a good advocate, like, for your athletes, for yourself, for your program. And I think that matters so much.
So we talked about all of this, and now I just want to use an example of how I would do this with a player asking about playtime. So I have this one player, and I won't use him for an example because he's too realistic. Like, he asked, how can I provide more value to the team to get more playtime, which is like the best question an athlete could ever ask. So if you're an athlete listening to this and you want more playtime, that's the question you ask. You don't ask for more playtime. Now, for the 90% of athletes that will ask, Coach, how can I get more playtime? It's an opportunity for you as a coach to be like, how do you feel like you could deserve more playtime? Who do you feel like you can, play better than? why do you think you're not getting as much play time? So then they get the opportunity to articulate. Or you can ask, are you putting in extra work to be, like be a better shooter, be a better rebounder, to be physically stronger? But like, I would just flip it and ask questions, because they're going to then answer pretty much the entire reason of why they should maybe get some more play time, or why they're sitting on the bench. Because I think a lot of times they feel like they should be playing, not even because they like really want to play, but because sitting on the bench hurts, right? It stings, and people are uncomfortable with that sting. And I was on the opposite side. Like, I was too comfortable being on the bench. Like, I wish, like, I worked so hard just to make the team my senior year that I just was like done. I didn't quit, but like I quit like putting in the extra work and was just comfortable with that. And like, if there was one regret I have from high school sports, is like, I wish I kept training to try and crack the rotation, because I know I could have, but I was just so happy to make the team. So like, still give your athletes like that agency, because we want to empower our kids. Like, when we need leaders. Like, we really, really desperately bad need leaders in this world. And right now, the internet and everything, like, it's building them to be followers. So it's our job as coaches to build leaders.
Yeah, I echo all of that completely.
Cool. Well, that was a fun episode, kind of spontaneous. Coach Addie just decided, hey, let's hop on. So maybe we might do this a little bit more. And so I really appreciate you all listening. Send this over to a coach friend or a parent. If you feel like they'd get something out of this, make sure you subscribe to the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. We drop episodes every week. And with that, Coach Furtado and Coach Addie out. You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court, with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream.
When a kid has a real problem or wants to talk about playtime or playing a different position, whatever it may be, like, the initial reaction from Coach Justin is never to be defensive. It's always to come into the conversation with curiosity. And I think that curiosity, is also like a good keyword for this whole conversation. Like, being a good coach, you have to be curious not only about your sport, but about your athletes, about how you can become more adaptable with a particular athlete. If you demonstrate that you're interested and like curious about how your athletes feel, I think that makes a huge difference.
No, 100%. And again, like, talking about that humility, it's just an opportunity to connect with your athletes, which is kind of what we're kind of going in circles and talking about, that connection. And that's what it's all about. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.